A doctor told me I had 6 months to live, and 11 months later I found out why I was still here because he'd mixed up my test results with another patient's file entirely. I was 34 when I got the diagnosis. Aggressive pancreatic cancer, stage 4, inoperable. The kind of news that rearranges every single plan you've ever made for your future in the space of one appointment. I quit my job within a month. Spent my modest savings on a trip to Portugal I'd always promised myself I'd take someday. Wrote letters to people I love. The kind you write when you believe you're running out of time to say things properly. 6 months came and went. I was still alive, exhausted but functioning, though weaker than I had expected given how aggressive the doctors had described my cancer to be. At month 8, a new oncologist took over my case after my original doctor left the practice unexpectedly. She reviewed my full file carefully during our first appointment and grew quiet, then asked a series of questions that made me increasingly uneasy. She ordered a completely fresh set of scans and blood work, explaining gently that something in my chart didn't line up cleanly with how I was actually presenting after 8 months. The results came back 11 days later. I didn't have pancreatic cancer at all. I never had. Here's the twist that turned nearly a year of preparing to die into something else entirely. A lab processing error, combined with the records mix-up during a software migration at the original hospital, had merged parts of my file with another patient's. A man with a similar name and birth year, who actually did have the aggressive cancer I'd been diagnosed with. He had, tragically, passed away 4 months into his own treatment. I'd essentially been living out someone else's terminal diagnosis for nearly a year, while he'd needed treatment more urgent than what records apparently indicated he'd received. The hospital launched a full internal investigation once my new oncologist reported the discrepancy. It turned out to be one of the most serious data integrity failures the facility had seen in years, prompting a complete overhaul of how they cross-verified patient identities during their electronic records transition. I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot for almost 2 hours after getting the news, unable to process the sheer size of what had just happened. Not sick, not dying, alive, with an entire future in front of me I'd already quietly said goodbye to. I'd quit a job I actually loved. I'd need to rebuild savings I'd happily spent believing I wouldn't need them much longer. Some of those letters I'd written, meant to be read after I was gone, had already been delivered to people who now had to process an entirely different kind of shock. But none of that mattered nearly as much as simply being alive. I filed a formal complaint and eventually a lawsuit that resulted in real policy changes at that hospital system, changes that likely prevented other patients from experiencing anything similar going forward. I also, quietly, reached out to the family of the man whose file had been merged with mine. It was an incredibly delicate, painful conversation, but one I felt I owed them, learning what I could about a stranger whose diagnosis I'd unknowingly lived through for nearly a year. I went back to Portugal 18 months later, this time not to say goodbye to the world, but to actually see it properly. With an entire lifetime ahead of me I never expected to get back. I don't take a single ordinary morning for granted anymore. Sometimes the worst news of your life turns out to be the wrong file entirely, and sometimes, impossibly, you get to find that out in time to actually live the life you thought you'd already lost.